All right, same scenario, but now let's say the lender comes in and instead of wanting a $70 loan, they want a $75 loan. And the bank takes a look at that and says, oh my gosh, so now the capital stack, the borrower only has $25 in his equity, or 25% of the capital stack. We're providing 75% of the capital stack, and so there's 75% of debt. If we take a look at that in this portion right here, this loan is so risky that we're going to risk it a double B. A double B is worse than triple B, and certainly worse than triple A. You know what? And our appetite, we only accept loans down to the triple B level. So the fact that this borrower wants to receive a loan that we're risking as a double B loan, we're not comfortable with that, and I don't think we can make the loan. So in this case, the borrower would not be able to get the loan. They'd have to go on to either another bank or maybe not even be able to do the deal. Now, one option that this hypothetical borrower has is they can go to a CMBS lender, and they probably will get a loan up to their $75 amount, or 75% of the capital stack, because structured finance. So the magic in structured finance is that it uses the concept of pooling assets, tranching, and credit enhancement to make more capital available, and typically at lower borrowing costs. So typically the pooled assets are securitized, which means that all those loans are put together in a pool, and then a bank like Goldman, Morgan, JP Morgan will sell individual bonds off to the market, which is the tranching part of it. So let's take a look at the benefits before we go into the specifics of how this works. So the benefits to the borrower are that there's greater access to funds. So again, in our last example, where a traditional bank would not have made, they just didn't have the risk appetite for a double B risk loan, they would not have made that deal. But with CMBS lenders, you typically, there's a larger risk appetite because of the pooling, because of tranching, and because of credit enhancement. And so that makes for the borrower greater access to funds. So greater access to leverage means there's higher prices. A lot of times there's lower cost to a CMBS loan. Again, because it's more efficient in how it allocates capital, which we'll go over in a second. And securitizations typically have higher ratings than the parent entity or the borrower, which again equates to a cheaper borrowing rate. Now, the benefits there's some benefits also to the lender. So they're able to more precisely align their capital outlays to their preferred risk. So both what is held on the balance sheet and what is actually sold to the market. They have the ability to recycle their balance sheet and earn higher fees. And by recycling the balance sheet, what I mean is that when a CMBS lender goes and makes a loan, typically they will wait till they come up with about 100 loans, and they'll pull them off, create the securities or securitize them, and then sell them off to the public. Once they have sold their loans into that pool, they get all their money back, and they're able to go out and recycle that and use that capital to make another CMBS loan. And they probably are able to make 3 or 4 different loans during that year based upon one amount of money, which is completely different than a traditional banker or bank loan, which basically if you make a 5-year loan, your money is out for 5 years to somebody, and you don't get access to that until basically the maturity date. And lastly, the benefit of the lender is the granularity of pools of securitized assets can help mitigate the credit risk to individual borrowers. Let's take a look at some of the magic of structured finance a little bit in depth. So we talked before about pooling. So there's a large pool, and if one loan goes bad, hopefully the other loans basically are there to generate cash flow to be able to cover any shortfalls of somebody who defaults. The second key to structured finance is tranching. Now, tranching, if you speak French, tranche means slice or class. So what happens is tranching in the CMBS world is the creation of different security classes from the same pool of assets. And usually they're going to have different credit ratings. So I'll go over an example here in a later slide, but tranching allows for cash flows and losses to be directed to different tranches. This creates the ability to have greater control over risk and return profiles for each tranche. The Bank for International Settlements Committee on the Global Financial System states a key goal of the tranching process is to create at least one class of securities whose rating is higher than the average rating of the underlying collateral pool. So this is a visualization of the structure, the tranching, and the structuring of the cash flows. Okay, so we've got our individual slices here. So we've got what's called a super senior AAA. We have a mezz AAA, a junior AAA. We can think all of these as just AAAs. Then you have the next most risky, which is AA, and then the next most risky single A, down to triple B, double B, and then our most risky, basically B or are non-rated. Okay, so those are the different tranching. So just by tranching doesn't add anything, but once you say, hey, every time money comes in, either through principal pay down or just the normal debt service payments, the very first tranche that gets paid is the top tranche. And then once the top tranche has been paid, if there's any cash left over, it goes down and pays the second tranche. And once the second tranche is paid, if there's any money left over, it goes down and pays the third tranche. And then the fourth tranche, and all the way down until the end of the tranche. If for some reason there's a shortfall, there's no money to pay, let's say, the B or the non-rated last tranche, then they don't get paid and they suffer a loss. So the payments waterfall goes down, the loss waterfall goes up. So if there's a default or there's a shortfall in payments, it doesn't matter what loan it is. So let's say we have 100 loans in this pool. It doesn't matter which loan loses dollars or is unable to make the payment. The very first tranche that doesn't receive money is the bottom tranche. And if the loss is greater than the size of the first tranche, then it starts eating into the second tranche, and then the third, and then the fourth, and all the way up to the top. So you can see by structuring, this is why it's called structured finance, by structuring losses and by structuring payments, you are protecting this very top tranche. And that's why we can say that this is the least risky tranche. Now there's a cost to that, right? So if you take a look over here, these are just typical spreads. So it's swaps. The S stands for swaps and T stands for treasuries. So the least risky tranche, you're only getting swaps plus 13 basis points. Where if you go all the way down here to triple B, there's more risk here. You're getting swaps plus 215 basis points. So there's a price that you pay, but you get more protection. Now imagine if you are that original bank that we talked about that only was willing or felt comfortable taking triple B or less risky up to triple A. You could go in, instead of if your borrower came and said, hey, I want to do a $75 loan and that's going to be a double B risk, and you say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. What you can do is they could go in and they could buy all these tranches, these blue tranches that they feel comfortable with, and not buy the triple B or the double B tranche or the more risky tranches. That makes it more efficient because there's a certain groups of investors who will fight to get these least risky tranches. There's a certain group of investors who like the middle class, the middle tranches, and there's a certain amount of investors who like the most risky tranche. And because you've expanded the number of lenders that can participate in this deal or in this pool, because you allow them to pick their individual tranches, there's more competition, and more competition drives price down. And that's one of the pieces of magic for structured finance. Now you might be asking, well, who would ever want to buy the most risky tranche of a CMBS pool? Well, there's a couple different entities. The first is hedge funds. Hedge funds have guaranteed or have basically promised or soft promised their investors a certain return. So if they've said, hey, we sort of are targeting 15% return, if they were to buy a bunch of AAA or even AA or single A or triple B, those return only probably 5, 6, 7, 8%. There's no way they'd be able to get their 15% targets. So they need to go down into these bottom tranches. But the biggest buyer of these tranches is something very unique to commercial real estate. It's called a B piece buyer. In this gray here, this is often just called a B piece. So there are individuals who are more real estate focused and less investment management focused, who say, hey, listen, I'm comfortable with the commercial real estate here, and I know real estate very, very well. I've looked at all the 100 loans in the pool, and I'm comfortable with buying this at these rates. And the B piece buyers often come in and will buy the bottom tranches, the most risky tranche. They also have a power to kick out some loans. So when the banks are pulling all these loans together, trying to select their 100 loans that are going to go into the pool, they will contact the B piece buyers ahead of time and say, hey, listen, we're doing this deal. Here's the loans. Let us know what you think you would get for a price and if you oppose any of the loans we're making. So the B piece buyers have power from the standpoint they can go through all the loans and say, oh, these two loans here, I do not like the structure of them. I don't like the location, or we have too much exposure to hotels already. You need to kick these two loans out. They will go back to the banks who are creating these pools and say, here's our price, but you got to get rid of these two loans. So those are the B piece buyers. The last and final element of the magic, if you will, of structured finance is credit enhancements. So credit enhancements are key in creating a security with a higher rating than the underlying collateral. So the type of credit enhancements that you might see, and we've gone over those, a couple of these in the last slide. You give priority to payments, right? The very least risky, or the top tranche, gets priority in payments. They get paid first. You do priority of losses. So the very top tranche, again, is the last tranche to take a loss. So by enhancing that credit, you're creating this magic, if you will, where it'll increase competition because lenders can be more efficient in where they place their dollars. You might have subordination of tranches or loans or bonds. So if you go back to our last slide and take a look at all those tranches, there's a bunch of tranches below those AAA tranches. Those tranches have to basically take their losses first, because you're subordinating those losses to the AAA tranches. That amount of subordination gives protection to the AAA. You also might have over-collateralization. So this is the amount, over-collateralization is where the collateral is greater than the amount of the bonds. So I might have loans that are worth 100, but I only go out and sell bonds worth 70. So I have an over-collateralization of about 30. And then lastly, you can use derivatives or insurances as backstops. So sometimes you can go out to an insurance company and say, hey, listen, I need what's called an insurance wrap. I need an insurance wrap on this tranche. So let's say the single A tranche. And basically what that insurance wrap does is it provides the buyer that security that if something goes wrong, if the losses eat up all the way to that tranche and will affect that tranche, that in our example, that A tranche, that an insurance company will come in and say, we will make you whole. So if due to losses in the pool that your A tranche will lose $10, you have insurance that if you will not lose that $10. We will pay you that $10 and make you whole. So those are examples of the credit enhancements. And again, this makes buying these securities or lending to these borrowers in the pool much, much more attractive, which it increases competition, which drives down the rates that the end borrower actually will see. Now, just because you have a structured finance product doesn't mean you have to go out to the market and securitize it. So the securitization is the selling of the pool's cash flows to some third-party investor as a security. Usually it's what's called a pass-through bond. Investors are repaid from the principal and interest cash flows collected from the underlying collateral and redistributed through the capital structure of the new structured finance products. So again, all that cash flow that are basically monthly payments on those 100 loans that are in your pool go into a giant, so they go into a giant pool, and they're redistributed first to the top tranches, and then if there's enough money, it goes all the way down to the bottom tranche. Now, rating agencies play an important role for these instruments that are to be sold to investors. So a lot of times investors don't understand structured finance or don't understand real estate, but they're attracted to the returns. So what they do is they'll go out to the rating agencies and say, hey, will you rate this and tell me what it's rated? Is this a AAA tranche, or is this a double A tranche, or is this even maybe like a single B tranche? You need to tell me, because I'm only allowed to invest in certain rated products. So the banks who are pulling these structured finance products together will go out to these rating agencies and say, hey, here are all the loans, here's all the information you need, ask us if you have any questions, but I need you to basically say, of these $100 of loans that are in this pool, how much is rated AAA? How much is rated AA? How much rated a single A? And the rating agencies will go and do their investigation, and they're conservative, and they'll come up basically with the sizes of each of the tranches that the banks or the people who are pulling these structured finance together will then go back out, create the securities or the bonds, and sell them to the public market. So let's again go over what I call the magic of structured finance when you compare it to a traditional bank loan. The market becomes much more efficient due to the tranching and shifting of risk. Because lenders are able to lend in smaller amounts, they are more able to increase exposure at the risk points that they desire. Because there are more lenders in the market, prices are going to decrease through that competition. And lenders are more able to efficiently match duration to their assets, to liabilities on their balance sheet. That's just a fancy way of saying they can pick which tranche they want and where they're comfortable.